Okay, here's a thought. What if studying biology or geology could actually be a form of worship? Today, we're diving into a really fascinating perspective from the 8th century that argues exactly that. It's a school of thought that saw science not as some rival to faith, but as its deepest, most profound expression.
So, at the very heart of this worldview is a powerful idea that completely reframes the whole purpose of knowledge. It really challenges the modern assumption that science and faith are in separate boxes. Instead, it suggests they're two sides of the very same coin.
Now, think about where you'd expect to find a verse like this. Probably in a chapter about prayer or belief, right? But what's so striking is where it's actually placed. It shows up right in the middle of a passage describing the natural world. The colors of mountains, the diversity of animals, the patterns of rain.
And that raises a huge question. How exactly does studying rocks lead to piety? This was the central puzzle for the 8th century scholar Imam al-Sadiq. But to really get his unique answer, we need to understand the world of ideas he was responding to. So let's take a quick trip through how our view of nature has evolved.
Our scientific view of nature, it's actually super recent. For most of human history, we've related to the world in totally different ways, moving through these really distinct stages of understanding.
Early on, humanity was just in such awe of nature's power. Thunder, floods, the sun, that we feared it and we worshipped it. Then we moved into a stage where we tried to explain it all through myths and stories. And finally, the ancient Greeks showed up and started a whole new phase, analyzing the world with logic and reason.
This story about the bat is a perfect example of that mythological stage. It's not a scientific explanation, of course, but it's a really creative attempt to answer the why. In this case, it gives a reason for why bats are creatures of the night exiled to caves.
And then, in the 8th century, a new intellectual revolution starts to brew. As Greek philosophy flooded the Arabic-speaking world with all this rational thought, Imam al-Sadiq saw an opportunity. He didn't reject this new logic. Instead, he proposed this revolutionary fourth stage, a synthesis of reason with purpose.
His whole point was that studying the natural world had much deeper purposes than just, cataloging facts or inventing new technology. He believed that scientific observation, if you do it with the right intention, could lead you directly to spiritual insight.
So, from this unique perspective, the study of nature becomes this profound exercise for both your mind and your spirit. He laid out 4 key goals that really transform science from just another subject into a true journey of discovery.
So what are these deeper purposes?
He outlined 4 distinct goals for scientific inquiry, and each one kind of builds on the last. Let's break them down.
Okay, purpose number 1. This is the bedrock of the whole thing. It's about moving from observing the craft to understanding the craftsman. The argument is simple. The complexity and order you see in nature just have to point to a creator.
And what's so cool is that the Imam didn't get bogged down in some super complex, abstract argument. Nope, he used a simple, everyday object to make an incredibly powerful point about design.
Pay attention to the language he uses here. The argument goes way beyond just existence. By describing the contents as liquid silver and gold, and the chick as a peacock, the Imam is pointing to divine attributes. He's not just saying there's a designer, but an artist with incredible power and meticulous care.
So once you've established existence, the next step is to look deeper. The goal now is to see the profound wisdom in natural phenomena, especially in things that might seem kind of strange or even flawed at first glance.
This is a perfect example. From a purely survivalist perspective, this seems like a major disadvantage, right? But Imam al-Sadiq saw this deep, multi-layered wisdom in what looks like a vulnerability.
When you look at it this way, that long period of helplessness isn't some biological flaw. It's the very mechanism that forges the family, that instills humility, and creates the bonds that hold our entire society together. It's profound wisdom disguised as weakness. All right, let's move on to the third purpose. This one's a biggie. It's about using the study of nature to tackle those really difficult philosophical questions, what you might call the big problems, like the existence of evil and suffering in the world.
For a lot of people, the existence of pain is a major source of doubt. But in this worldview, pain gets completely reframed. It's not a negative, it's a misunderstood necessity, a gift even.
And this just brilliantly illustrates how something we see as purely negative is actually essential for our physical, social, and even our spiritual well-being. Think about it. Without pain, our bodies would be unprotected, our societies would be chaotic,
and our hearts would be way less capable of empathy. And that brings us to the final purpose, which is basically to put it all together. It's about zooming out from all the individual things to see the universe not as some random collection of stuff, but as an integrated system with an overarching purpose and meaning.
This worldview sees the universe as an incredible act of divine hospitality. It's as if we are guests in a home that has been perfectly prepared just for us. The atmosphere is a protected roof, the stars are lamps, and the earth is a carpet that's been furnished with everything we could possibly need to thrive. So after journeying through these 4 layers of meaning, we're left with a totally transformed view of the world. What's the ultimate takeaway from this 8th century philosophy of science? What does it ask of us today?
From this perspective, every star, every single cell, every law of physics is a form of communication. The entire cosmos is like a text filled with signs and symbols, inviting us not just to measure and categorize, but to actually contemplate and understand. And that right there is the final, challenging idea from this ancient worldview. What if the goal of science isn't just a search for knowledge, but a search for meaning? Now that's a question that could change not just how we see the world, but how we live in it.